And there's this whole thing in Mark from chapters 5 to chapter 9, all about people that are clean and people that are unclean. And if you don't read 5 books of Moses, you won't know what clean and unclean. And you won't see that Jesus is not only demonstrating that he is Moses and that he is God, but that he is also the temple.
We are back once again with Yoel Ben David. I'm so grateful to have you here on the channel, Yoel.
Thank you, Jeff.
In Matthew 5:17, Jesus says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." The NLT even says, "Don't misunderstand why I have come. I did not come to abolish the law of Moses or the writings of the prophets. No, I came to accomplish their purpose." So many people would take this to mean that the law is no longer significant. Now, as believers, we understand that the Torah, it's not like we've been talking about in the last couple episodes. The Torah isn't only made up of the law. It's a narrative that contains laws. So being that Yeshua fulfilled the law or brought it to its fullest, many would think that the Torah is no longer significant. Yet you are still passionate about the Torah. What makes you so passionate about the Torah?
I am passionate about the Torah because what Jesus is trying to say in the passage that you quoted for us is that people have sometimes looked at Jesus as thinking that he's coming to cancel, or to the old word, abrogate the Old Testament. In fact, some people have gone as far as to knock all of those books out. But in reality, what Jesus is saying is, no, I haven't come to do that. In fact, I've come to make it real, to fulfill it, to accomplish it, is the word that was used in the translation you quoted. What he's saying is, I've come to take everything that was sort of like, everything that we were talking about, everything that was being directionally sort of like pointed to in the Old Testament, and I've come to show you exactly what that was all about. Which means, if you want to understand what Jesus is saying and what he is doing and why he is doing it and where all these things come from, you can't just take the Gospels and read them without having read the 5 books of Moses and without having read significant passages of the rest of the Old Testament, because you'll misunderstand them.
Right.
Do
you know how many references there are to the Old Testament in the New Testament?
Lord, no, I don't.
Hundreds.
Yeah, I mean, definitely hundreds.
Yeah.
I just couldn't give you a precise number.
No, that's why I'm saying that, because to your point, reading the New Testament without having any knowledge of those references leaves you coming up short.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't, one of my favorite passages is the Jesus being born, and then they're taking him to Egypt, and then they bring him back from Egypt.
Right.
And there's this great verse that I think also gets misread. They take Jesus to Egypt, and then in Matthew chapter 2, it says, they took him to Egypt. Why? To fulfill the prophecy that out of Egypt I brought my son. And people are thinking like, well, hang on a second. So they took him to Egypt just to fulfill it, just so they could bring him back? Well, no, that's not what's being said at all. Because you see, just before that, we hear about Herod, who goes to Bethlehem, right, and kills all the children.
Right.
And then Jesus is taken from Israel to Egypt to fulfill, out of Egypt I took my son. What Matthew was saying is that Israel has become Egypt, and that Herod is Pharaoh, and he's killing all the baby boys.
Yep.
But he's actually criticizing Israel and calling it Egypt. But if you haven't read, if the story of Moses and Pharaoh and all of these 5 books of Moses context things are not in your head when you're reading Matthew, then you won't get it. You won't understand why, Jesus goes up to a mountain and comes back with rules, why he's feeding the 5,000. It's like all of this stuff will become bizarre if you don't realize that that Jesus is demonstrating that he is the greater Moses of which the 5 books of Moses spoke about.
Yes,
So
yes.
the reason I'm passionate about the Torah is that if you don't have it, you won't get it.
Yeah, I was studying this morning, actually, the parallels between the story of Moses and Jesus, the parallels between Moses and Jesus. So it's ironic that we're speaking about that right now.
Yeah, I mean, in the book of Mark, people touch Jesus and they become clean, right? And there's this whole thing in Mark from chapters 5 to chapter 9, all about people that are clean and people that are unclean. And if you don't read 5 books of Moses, you won't know what clean and unclean. And you won't see that Jesus is not only demonstrating that he is Moses and that he is God, but that he is also the temple, the altar, which you could touch. And if you were to touch the altar, you wouldn't make the altar unclean, but you who were unclean would be made clean. And so Jesus is the temple. He is God. He is the presence in the temple. He is Moses. He is all these things. And it's all these images and metaphors are getting swirled around by the gospel writers. And if you don't, like I said, if you don't know it, you won't get it. You won't pick things up.
Yeah, it's funny, Yoel, because before I came to faith, I'd never read the Old Testament, the Tanakh. I never read the New Testament. It was just a big mess that I couldn't understand. My mind hadn't been opened up to it yet. But when I came to faith, this passion that you're talking about came over me to read the scriptures. And I thought, wow, I'm going to spend so much time in the New Testament because I grew up Jewish. And I'm just going to, spend all my hours studying the New Testament. And what happened? I went right into the Old Testament from Genesis. And over the last 5 years, I've stayed mostly in the Old Testament and in the 5 books of Moses. Mm-hmm. For some reason, there's this amazing passion to study this part of our Jewish culture and history so much, and it hasn't taken me away from the New Testament because the New Testament is beautiful. But it was really obvious to me how the New Testament was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. Basically, the Jewish people have a problem, and the Old Testament shows that, and the New Testament shows us how God fixed that problem. But like you said, that passion for studying the Torah.
Right.
No, well, thank you so much, Yoel. I really appreciate your time with us, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can find information on Yoel down in the description, including his weekly Torah portion videos, which are short, fun, and educational. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Links are in the description. If you'd like to chat with us live, you can go to jewsforjesus.org, and may you all find peace and hope in Yeshua.